Up next, I'd like to give a warm welcome to David Treat from Accenture, our title sponsor. David Treat is the managing director of Accenture's financial services practice, and he serves as the global head of the blockchain practice at Accenture. He has over 19 years of experience in financial services with an expertise in strategy, innovation, and process excellence. I've had the opportunity to get to know David over the past several years, and he is a man that is truly dedicated and passionate about the blockchain community. A key to his overall success has been based on this concept of a commitment to the community. If you get to know David, you know that he's involved in a lot of projects above and beyond his own, in addition to the work he does with the Chamber of Digital Commerce, serving on our executive committee. Please help me welcome to the stage the global blockchain lead at Accenture and the title sponsor of the DC Blockchain Summit, David Treat.
Good morning. I'm a slow learner. Last year, I think I also followed Congressman Schweikert and immediately regretted it because he's great and he covers a lot of material. I'm going to skip over some stuff that he did a great job covering. So really excited to be back. I want to thank Perry Ann and the Chamber for agreeing to have me back. As questionable as a judgment that call was. The Chamber tweeted out a couple weeks ago a reminder of some things that I had said last year, which was a fantastic challenge and marker to say, let's reflect on where we've been for the past 12 months. Can I recreate that pose? I'm heavier. I've gained, I think I've put on about 20 pounds. I've lost a little more hair, and it's more gray. But a ton has happened. It's my complete lack of care of myself is due to the massive amount of progress and effort and challenge and excitement from our client base, from the general community, all of the opportunities, all the exciting things that Congressman Schweikert was referencing. So what I wanted to do is take just a little troll through the past 12 months, and talk about some of what has changed, what's different from 12 months ago, and then I want to talk about digital identity. How many people bought that phone? Back in that, yeah, it was the category killer, right? It was the version 1 of a smartphone. Nearly everybody had it. It was that category killer, and you look at what we're carrying today. The great news is we're at the V1s of DLT platforms, right? Between Hyperledger Fabric, R3 Corda, DA's platform, and many more. Over the past 12 months, we hit those V1s. Active work is happening on V2s, and we're going to see as dramatic a difference in capability and usefulness, utility, et cetera, as we are seeing when you think about the quick cycle of innovations that drove us from what we all loved, right? That was a killer phone. To what we have today. So it's great to just ground ourselves, first and foremost, to say we're at V1s, meaning that the platforms are ready for production implementation. Those first efforts are happening right now, but the excitement we should have is for what V2, V3, V4 is going to look like and everything that's yet to come. So confidence in that we have V1s and optimism and enthusiasm for what's going to come next. This production architecture and tuning, try to find the right image for that. There's been a change in the type of work we've been doing with clients really over the past 6 months, where up until 2017, almost everything was prototypes and proof of concepts. It was the experimental phase. Everyone had to learn about what this technology could do. We had to prove that functionally it could do what we all thought it could do, and that all went tremendously well. And we've seen a pivot in the type of work that we're being asked to do now, and we're learning a ton from, which is, as we did with the MAS and the ABS in Singapore for Project Dubin, we did, for the first time ever, a side-by-side build. They gave us a single set of functional requirements around wholesale bank payments, real-time gross settlement, and they said, build it 3 times, which at first, thought about it for a second, and I thought it was brilliant, actually. So we built it on Fabric, Quorum, and Corda simultaneously to be able to compare the architectural differences between the 3, and part of the great news was all 3 worked. All 3 met the use case. Did it differently, different architectural dimensions to them. Great learning that came out of it. But that prompted now a whole change in the type of work that we're doing, where now, instead of saying, do another prototype, prove out the functional capabilities of this technology, we want you to start to tune the architecture. How fast can you get it to go? How much transaction volume can you push through it? What kind of data loads? How can you architect it most efficiently? And so the nature of our work is changing, and we should all draw encouragement from that as well, in that we're ready for the architectural tuning phase. We've gotten past the functionally, what does it do, and is it good enough? We've got a huge focus on the real-world application and security. As I was listening to Congressman Schweikert, touched a couple of times through his speech of what is essentially what happens when it goes wrong. How do you achieve the necessary levels of confidentiality, security, data segregation, et cetera? And so there's a huge focus now and a real shift, I think, both in the corporate and enterprise domain, as well as the work that we're doing in the crypto asset domain around custody. How do you effectively achieve custody of a tokenized asset? And how should that work? And so we and others and partners with companies like Thales, that's a Thales HSM machine, hardware security module. It's the de facto standard in financial services, governments, pharmaceutical. Anytime you have a high degree of sensitivity, high degree of, where you want to be, very low risk tolerant domains, you protect keys and assets in HSM infrastructure. How to do that in the patterns of how this technology is being implemented is not, it's not straightforward. It's hard work. That hard work is happening. So again, we should all draw some comfort and some enthusiasm around plugging this stuff into real-world infrastructure and getting it to work in a way where we can actually fix it when it goes wrong. We can have a degree of confidence around the custody of tokenized assets, protecting keys, applying the latest and greatest of thinking that's evolved over the past decades around that, using machines like HSM infrastructure is critical, and it's happening. Taking a little bit of a pivot, the ecosystem design. I'm getting asked a lot by clients, what will this journey look like? How hard will it be? Tell me about the technical complexities. What are the challenges? And part of my answer is the technology piece it's work, right? It's hard. There's still things we have to figure out. There's innovation that we still have to do. But in the corporate and enterprise construct, the equally, if not more difficult work is getting corporates and enterprises together to agree, first, that there's value in shared access to data, but second, the business rules, the policies, the standards, the governance as to how to get them to, into a place where they're comfortable sharing access to data. The formation of those ecosystems is critical. It's probably as hard as, or not harder, effort around but besides the technology itself. So we have a huge focus on that. I think that's part of a really important public dialogue. There are regulatory and policy implications around it. There are the notions of operating within current business flows and processes as a path of least resistance, balanced with the enormous creativity and innovation that could come if we blow up the existing business processes and structures. And so our ability to bring peers in some cases, so take B3I, you've got 15 reinsurance companies that got together to form a consortium, or cross-industry consortiums where you have a resources company, a manufacturer, a shipper, a port, a trade finance bank coming together in a vertical ecosystem. The formation of those ecosystems is key, and then how do you run it? Who operates that ecosystem? How is that done effectively? We've got a major focus in helping to figure that out. How do you do all of the things that sit in between those organizations? The onboarding, the offboarding, the key management, the governance, the policies and standards, all of which would necessarily sit independently in some respects within that ecosystem. So a lot of work happening right now around the ecosystem design. And then there was a question on interoperability that came up. We've got a big focus on this. We've actually just submitted a patent. We have a working prototype taking a slightly different angle on it. Instead of the notion of trying to drive a change within DLT platforms to enable them to interoperate, or to use the token aspect to be able to transfer value from one to the other, we're taking a slightly different stance or approach to it, where we've got a design where we create, it's poorly named, we'll figure out a better name, but an interoperability node, if you will, that basically has the authorities, entitlements, and permissions of the two systems that you're trying to get to interoperate. And of course, if you introduce messaging into this between those two, you've really done nothing to really advance or stick with the spirit of what this technology can do. And so the basis of it is to have that interoperability node have the entitlements and the access in the two simultaneously, in the two platforms where you want to maintain a simultaneous view of the world. And we've written the business logic and some special things around the flow to basically be able to make simultaneous updates to both systems that either both succeed or both fail. And in that way, we can keep an active state of an object the same in two different DLT systems or more. And so we're excited about that. We're looking for partners. As always, we're not a product company, right? We're a services company. So when we invest the time and energy into innovations like this, it's all really with a call to our partners, existing and new, to say work with us to figure out how to actually bring this to production. And then I wanted to spend the bulk of my time, I think I've split this well, on digital identity. So one of our early learnings in the blockchain space was implicit in the notion of sharing access to data is, with whom are you sharing it? What can they see? What can you see? What can they do? What can you do? Who is just central to this? And so we started looking at that as every blockchain-based use case had that dimension, certainly for us in a corporate enterprise construct of who's allowed and what can they do. And so when you take a look at the identity infrastructure, it really hasn't changed in a very, very long time. The gist of identity today is what it was hundreds of years ago. What can you pull out of your pocket to show to someone else? They look at the veracity of that document, that thing that you've shown them, and then they make a decision. Do I believe you? Do I trust you? Does that engender some sort of entitlement or access or action that you can take? We are in an unprecedented level of issues. Now that we're not only operating in a physical world, but now we're operating in the digital world where our identity data has now been massively duplicated, fragmented. It's owned by the service providers and the authorities with whom we interact, and it's enormously distributed and inconsistent, right? Think about the last time you moved, had to do a change of address. How many different places did you have to go to update your address? Because you don't own that information. Whoever has collected it owns it. And at the end of the day, there's really only one true authority, at least in the US context, of your address, right? What does everyone do? Go to the United States Postal Service and you fill out a change of address form. That's the single authority on the source of truth of where you live. But today that information's fragmented and everywhere. In the corporate enterprise world, we have spent a ton of time and energy over the past couple of decades around CRM and how do we personalize services and how do we develop that very close relationship with a customer off of terrible, terrible data. Just, even within a company, having one business division and another business division potentially not know that they had the same person in both data stores, or not have the same information. Or I had the tremendously frustrating experience of going to the bank that holds my current mortgage 2 years ago and say, I want to refinance it. They said, fantastic. Here are all the forms. Can you fill them out? Tell us about yourself. Like, tell me about yourself. You're trusting me right now with this note, and I'm paying you every day. What do you mean, tell me about myself? Don't you know me? So you get the challenges. And then obviously, this has hit the regulatory front in a big way. GDPR, right to be forgotten, privacy regulations, concerned around identity thefts, identity hacks. It's a massive problem space. And so within that context, just taking some basic concepts, an identity has an intrinsic value, right? And this is felt no more severely than if you lose it, right? If you think about a refugee or someone who's forcibly displaced, which can happen anywhere, right? The chaos that people in the South around hurricane hits, you lose everything, you lose all your documents. In that moment, you can't be more vulnerable in today's modern society. There's a true intrinsic value to your ability to manage your identity. it defines what we can do and our access to modern society, our access to financial services and education and the like. And so without it, you're really excluded. And there's excitement around where we're headed and the possibilities of not just being able to achieve identity for, a better identity structure for humans, but groups of humans, organizations, things, AI devices, IoT devices, AI entities. The AI entity piece, Alexa can now integrate with your bank. They've upgraded from speech recognition to voice recognition, but let's pretend for a second they hadn't done that yet. My 8-year-old could have walked up to our Alexa in the house and said, hey, transfer $1,000 to my account. And without the right constructs and entitlements, the identity, the AI entity acting on our behalf has to be associated with our identity, and we need to know which entity did it and what entitlements and under what construct and what rules. It's going to pervade every aspect of how we're developing in this fourth industrial revolution, and it's got to be the identity of the things, the people, and the digital objects acting on our behalf. So I really enjoyed, Tim Berners-Lee gave a talk at Sibos this past fall. He expressed one of his, I wouldn't say regret per se, but one of his observations around how the internet evolved was it was missing the identity infrastructure and the payment infrastructure. It was really just a data sharing network. And so I think we're now on the threshold of actually introducing, through innovative technologies, not just blockchain, but others, the ability to add that piece. And so we've been working on that aggressively, and it's going to touch every part of our life, whether it's pharmaceuticals, travel, financial services, our, voting, you name it, it's pervasive. The need. So I want to show a quick video that summarizes some of our work and focus on this. It has started in a humanitarian context.
This is a question that often comes up in our daily
lives. I hit that button
lives.
too soon. Let me shut up.
Whether we're boarding a plane, checking our bank balance, or paying a utility bill, we regularly have to prove we are who we say we are. However, more than 1 billion people across the globe cannot prove who they are with any certainty. Many of those have never had a form of verifiable ID to begin with, and more than 15 million were victims of identity theft last year alone. With this in mind, we have developed a unique digital identity prototype to modernise identity management for organisations and individuals. Leveraging the power of blockchain and biometrics, the system makes establishing, tracking, and managing digital identities more efficient, user-friendly, secure, and less open to fraud. Let's follow Joseph as he establishes and builds his identity. At an enrolment station, his biometrics are securely captured through his fingerprints, voice, face, or an iris scan. Then several steps are taken to create a unique identifier using multiple security protocols. This identifier is then recorded on the blockchain, which acts as an index with links to all applicable data. This makes it easy to locate, access, and share information without Joseph's personal data being stored on the blockchain. Using an application on his phone, Joseph creates a personal profile that's multi-factored and authentication secured. The app allows Joseph to generate his own set of public and private keys which he can use to sign the data he sends to others. That way third parties can be absolutely certain the information is his. Joseph shares the public key using a QR code. When he scans this QR code at the enrolment station, an official attestation is added to his profile and signed by a private key. This is the beginning of Joseph's living identity, an identity that he will build with each stamp he collects from his university, his employer, or from government and non-government agencies. The major benefit of this identity system is that Joseph is always in control of his own personal data. He determines which information is shared, who sees it, and for how long. Instead of multiple paper documents, he can use a single, easy-to-manage app. The system makes life easier for organisations too. It's interoperable with other databases, so existing identity data stays put. Efficiency for background checks is greatly improved, as an organisation can choose to trust existing attestations instead of repeating the process. For additional security, there's also the option of checking data at source if the user grants permission. The system is also flexible. While this prototype has been created for a mobile device, The technology can work with or without connected devices. This prototype is the basis for our work with ID 2020, a public-private partnership committed to providing a digital identity to the 1.2 billion individuals living without a way to prove their existence. We believe it's the first step towards a digital identity that makes answering the question, "Who are you?" as simple as saying, "I am."
So we're super proud of this work and our partnerships that are forming within ID 2020. Microsoft, the Rockefeller Foundation, UNHCR. There's really a fantastic group coming together to challenge what has to be just a key focus of ours. We can't continue to develop our modern society and leave more than 1 billion people behind to just not be able to participate on any level. And part of the reason that I'm excited about this being able to work is that developing solutions, and we have no pretense that this is the solution, right? We're looking for partners to help advance this with us in a very open way. But tackling this problem is critical. Bringing these people into a modern societal context is critical in terms of just the pressures it puts on, on the developed world, but just for their own, for the dignity of these people. And really, it could be any one of us, right? Whether it's, forcibly displaced because of a hurricane or something, worse. It's something that could affect all of us. The other thing that's really important about it is the same solution that a refugee or displaced person needs is the exact same thing that we need to manage our ability to avoid identity theft issues, to be able to have much better customer service where it's the same Dave treat at my bank, my insurance company, et cetera, all integrated together. It needs and it will be the same solution for a developed world context as it will be for those that don't have any access to digital identity. And so part of what I wanted to talk about, I'm running out of time here, so I'm going to skip over some of the principles. But the gist of it is we think we have a solution pattern that we've been working on with partners, with organizations like the Decentralized Identity Foundation, with ID 2020, with all of our ecosystem partners. We think we have something that is a solution pattern that will work, and we need the whole community to get together to build it. I'm going to skip past that as well. My point, I was going to make a point to link back to last year's speech around where we were, but you want me to do that? All right, I'll go back. So tying back to my speech last year, how many people were here last year? I couldn't see the hands when, okay, enough. I drew an analogy to where we are with blockchain and to the building of the Large Hadron Collider in CERN, crosses the borders of Switzerland, France, and Italy. This massive underground dig to build this super collider to then do all of the experiments necessary to try to discover, and ultimately they did the Higgs boson and learn about the origins of life. The really interesting thing about that whole project, one of the points that I made last year, was up until 2 years or a year before go live, the compute power required to process the data that was going to come off of one collision was going to take something like 130 years to process for one experiment. But and if you go back in time to when they first started digging, it was going to take something like 100,000 years to process one event. And so on the face of it, you would look at that situation from one perspective and say, why are you digging? This is pointless. But really, my point last year, and I'll carry it forward to this year, was there was confidence that the technology was going to be there in time for the project to finish. I think we're far better than that right now in the blockchain space. I think we now, with our V1s and the confidence in that all the testing and the innovation, there's a ton left to go. But we should be able to draw enormous confidence from where we are today relative to the confidence that these folks had digging the tunnel, against the challenges of never being able to process the data. They knew they could by the time it was ready, and they could. I think ultimately when they turned it on, they were down to something like a month or two. I'm going to get these facts wrong slightly, but it was doable. and now it's even faster. So just bringing it all together a little bit, what our work on digital identity, just our working style in general, right? We are technology independent. We are open. We have a massive ecosystem of partners that we work with. If you're in the room and you like anything that, that I've talked about, we want to work with you. Forming partnerships, particularly in the blockchain space, this is a team sport, right? Peers, competitors, clients, this is all going to meld together for us to be able to tackle these super hard problems around digital identity, but also to tackle the incredibly hard problems that we're trying to solve to create value in a corporate and enterprise construct or for the public good. This definitionally as a technology is a group activity. We're approaching it that way. We welcome everyone to partner with us. That is how we operate, it's how we act, and we're very proud of that. We've got a tent set up in the back with some of my team here who can talk about different dimensions and are very eager to talk with anyone who has ideas as to how to make it better. So thank you. I appreciate the time. Thank you, Perry Ann.